You know, it's not often I do a Bill Maher clip where I'm not giving him hell for being a stick up his own ass, especially when Piers Morgan's on the show, and those two happen to be the sane ones. That's how you know the other guest on the show is completely insane. So, this one features Katie Porter. Name fits the appearance rather well now, doesn't it? For those of you who don't know who this woman is, there's probably a good reason for that. Remember a while ago there was a story of a woman who poured boiling mashed potatoes on her husband's, well, presumably ex-husband's head? Yeah, that was this bit. So they're discussing the Riley Gaines saga, the swimmer who competed against the, You know, from now on, whenever I discuss that group that thinks they're oppressed but also ruin everything, yeah, I'm just gonna call them androids. So she was the lass who competed against the android. You all understand? Good, I'm glad you're on board.
Nobody, including Riley Gaines, who I disagree with strongly.
Only for political purposes, let's not kid ourselves.
Should feel
What do you
physically.
disagree with, out of interest?
I think that
I don't think you've ever had a thought that didn't involve excess calories. Mashed potatoes, anyone?
it should be up to sporting bodies.
Who adhere to the laws of reality and common sense. And let's be real, when they do happen to decide to adhere to reality and common sense, this one would no doubt throw a hissy fit and call them bigots.
To make the decisions about who
But
and
what
how
has she
should
said
compete.
that's actually wrong?
I think that
Whenever anyone starts a sentence with the phrase, I think that, it means I have no thoughts of my own and need to repeat a talking point, no matter how stupid I might sound.
what she has done is try to turn this. We talked about people, using things to kind of get likes and get clicks.
You mean like you're doing in this segment?
That's not what she's doing.
It's not.
Away with your disingenuousness and large derriere.
I've got no truck for Riley Gaines personally, but all I've seen her do is stand up for women's rights to fairness and equality.
Well, she has
She actually competed against Leah Thomas,
Android?
and it was obviously unfair. Leah Thomas won one of the races in the NCAA championships by 50 seconds against a bunch of biological females who simply couldn't keep up.
Ugh, you know, God bless Piers, but am I the only one who gets sick of even a label such as biological woman? It's man or woman. Everything else is stewed political arse. No amount of altercations or substance that you can snort, swallow, inject, or insert rectally is ever going to change the fact that you are either a man or a woman. And that's it. Everything else can piss off.
That cannot be right. It cannot be fair.
That is something that I think our sporting bodies should be dealing with.
No, because bureaucracies are sclerotic and arse.
And by the way, Riley is speaking up for herself,
Even though she no longer is in sports, as we can see with this tweet here.
and that is her prerogative, and I respect her free speech.
I think she's speaking up for pretty much every female athlete in the world.
I mean, wasn't that the point of Title IX? Title IX in the early 70s was something that was it was a major event in feminism, that we finally have this law that says at colleges, right, and I think high schools too, but definitely colleges, women's sports have to be given equal to men's sports, so that women aren't and this led to the WNBA and lots of other stuff. This seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be so many instances, I think, where wokeness is the opposite of what I grew up as liberalism. Liberalism was, let's give the women an equal shot. This is let's put a male in the swimming pool with the women. I don't get it.
Ah, yes. Well, allow me to clear that up for you there, Bill, seeing as you're a half-foot of a comedian and the other half is carrying the water for the Democratic Party. You see, liberalism as a doctrine that pushes equality under the guise of freedom is eventually going to hit a snag and get perverted. Do you know why? Because reality is not in fact equal. Equality requires force, and if you have biological reality manifesting that disparity, guess how draconian and stupid society ends up becoming?
Crazy. And meanwhile, trans people who genuinely want to compete at athletics and swimming or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are suffering here.
Leave it up to Piers to get fisted from both ends. No, they aren't, Piers. Any physical contest has to do with biological reality. The android perspective is a complete rejection of biological reality. How on earth are they being oppressed? You literally just said a few moments ago their entry is unfair, which is obviously true because men are physically superior to women. There is a reason why the entry and domination is only done by men entering women's sports, and no women are even trying to get into men's sports because they never win.
They need to be found a way to compete fairly.
No, that's rubbish.
No, disagree.
Absolutely.
And justly.
Well, what's your answer then?
Simple. Ban them, because there is no middle ground here. What is with our society's stupidly cocked, desperate desire to reach this mythical compromise in everything? Some things are absolute. Hit or miss, win or lose, men or women. God, I hate everyone.
I think there's one or two answers. I think they either compete against their biological sex.
Which is never gonna happen, by the way. Why do you think they're competing against women to begin with? Because they're men, and men have an instinctive drive to dominate, and because they're weak and inferior, they can't compete and beat better men. So they compete against women. Simple as that.
As many of them did before, or you create an entirely new category.
Which no one is ever going to watch, by the way. There's no audience for one, and two, there's not enough competitors. And let's be real, it'll just be a bunch of discount men competing against each other at a fraction of level of the top athletic ability. Again, no one is going to watch that. It's a waste of time and breath.
For a transgender athlete. And then they're able to compete fairly. But what you cannot do is continue to allow more and more trans athletes to start decimating women's records, in some cases, irrevocably.
You know, something has to be said for this. As many of you know, I am no fan of equality. I think it's complete bollocks. It's very easily abused and distorted, weaponized into an oppressive tool, hence why we get crap like this being discussed outside the realms of a freaking Monty Python skit. I genuinely believe there are people in this world who forever will remain utterly unfit to hold any positions of authority, whether this be via the ballot, public or private positions. They don't have the capacity, hence why I dislike democracy and favor monarchy. Look at this woman's reality-defined positions. If I told you she's a representative from California, all of you would go, oh yeah, that explains a lot. And it would. And that's how you know this has nothing to do with politics. This is a cult. No one pauses for a moment to realize what's actually going on here. Power has the capacity to decimate any sense or principles of decency. Eric van Corneleden has this really good quote. People are rarely diabolic or bent enthusiastically on evil. As a rule, they're only weak. They cannot resist temptation and thus give way to their evil drives. And that's this woman. Or frankly, anyone who wants to enter politics these days, especially on the left. This is a cult to whom they must bow down and kiss ring. Simple as that. It's funny she speaks on gains doing this to get likes and clicks as if she isn't doing the exact same thing. Does anyone in their right freaking mind think that if this cult did not exist, if this political regime's clout system wasn't based on this BS, that this thing would ever espouse this wicked perception of fairness and equality? Of course not. Never in a million freaking years. There's a creepy element of debasing oneself, this self-inflicted wound of humiliation. You have these ugly legions of golem-like figures all craving the power of the One Ring, and this is the level of sheer desperation they'd sink to in order to get it, like the lowest form of drug addicts. They're basically power-hungry whores, no more no less, and they will happily throw anyone under the bus to get it, including other women. Because again, no principles, no morals, no allegiance whatsoever, except to whatever group is at the head of this current thing that can give them their hit. This is why these people hate segregation, by the way. It's a form of exclusivity, regardless of whatever political weight or historical connotation that word may conjure up, but it's because these creatures are parasites which produce nothing. They live to feed off things. This is why the cult of intersectionality would die off if you introduced or pushed some or other, even cultural form of segregation. It needs a galvanizing enemy in the vicinity to keep them all glued together. Without it, they'd splinter off into a purity spiral, hence why you get Anna Kasparian's current trend of soon-to-be mental breakdown. Because you can't be a feminist and pro-android. It's not technically possible, because again, reality is a bitch.